It's 4 o'clock, and I now open the planning meeting. I want to welcome each one of you here and those who are watching live stream. Present with us, we have Alderman Marizuko, Councillor Will Coates, Councillor Ryan Basalt, Councillor Gemma Kitsos, Councillor Ben Lohberger, Alderman Louise Bloomfield, Councillor Bill Harvey, and Councillor Dr. Zim Sherlock, and I'm Mike Dutta, the Chair. And we also have the Director here with us of Strategy and Regulatory Services. Thank you for attending. There are no apologies.
Yes, there are. John Kelly and Louise Elliott.
Right, John Kelly and Louise Elliott. Leave of absence, there are none. Acknowledgement to country. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which the city of Hobart was built. I also acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa people of Tasmania, who have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, their culture, and their rights. I recognize the value of the Aboriginal people and their continued struggle, and I want to pay my respect to the elders past and present. Confirmation of minutes, number 1. Would someone moved by the Deputy, that the minutes of 12th August be received? All in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 2, confirmation of supplementary items. There are none. Number 3, indications of conflict of interest. Are there any? No. Number 4, transfer of item agenda. No. Number 5, planning authority items, consideration of items with deputation. Someone move that item 6.2 be taken out of sequence and dealt with as item 6.1. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Kitsos. All in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 6.1 will now become 6.2. So we're looking at 6.2, which is now 6.1, Vista accommodation. And we have a deputation, Meredith Kilangari. I'm sorry if I have mispronounced the name. Please bear with me. You have, please do come in the front end. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you.
And then we'll open it for questions. Remain there, and then when it's all finished, you can then move back to the seat. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. First and foremost, I'm here to represent the voice of short-term rental hosts who live and work in Hobart and have rights as residents and taxpayers. I'm an Airbnb community leader, and I run the Tasmanian Airbnb Host Club and online forum. I've done this for 10 years, and during that time I spearheaded the host campaign for fair STR guidelines during consultation for the Tasmanian statewide planning scheme in 2016, and spoke at the Premier's media conference when the details were released. I was also chosen for the inaugural Airbnb International Host Advisory Board and served a 2-year term championing the host voices in everything Airbnb does. I want you to know that Airbnb is not just your typical corporate. They care about hosts, their hosts' community, and what happens in those communities. They've funded a non-profit called Airbnb.org, which is an independent organisation that connects people with emergency housing during humanitarian crises, natural disasters and displacement. Every year, Airbnb offers thousands of dollars worth of grants to hundreds of non-profits around the world through their community grants. During my term on the Host Advisory Board, I secured a grant of $50,000 for Food Bank, and last year my club's chosen charity, Magnolia Place, a women's DV shelter in Launceston, received $50,000 as well. Airbnb offers They provide the basis for many types of stay other than holiday stays, and they include family reunions where families can't accommodate enough people, medical stays because we know Tasmanians have to travel south for procedures, there are also work stays, study stays, insurance stays and bereavement stays. This type of non-holiday stay is a vital service for Tasmanians and other travellers. Plus we take the overflow when hotels are full during busy times, so Hobart can accommodate more visitors. Airbnb reviews the behaviour of its hosts through a stringent guest review system, and then every quarter measures those reviews to grade hosts in various levels called Superhost, Guest Favourite and Top 1 to 5%. These titles are highly sought after as many guests filter their stays to find these hosts. Like many Hobart hosts, I have retained Superhost for 40 consecutive quarters. I'm a guest favourite and range from top 1 to 5% of listings worldwide. We host responsibly and care for guests like family. Although my listing is exempt from this draft amendment, I still believe that every host should also have the right to host. Most short-term rentals offer off-street parking, which decreases the impact on neighbourhood amenities. They also have required quiet hours, and many listings use minute devices which monitor and record noise levels, smoke, including cigarette smoke, etc. Most Airbnb hosts are eco-friendly. They're concerned about sustainability, and the club run regularly webinars about how hosts can be more sustainable. I have solar panels and a battery system. We follow eco-friendly principles and are careful about waste management and encourage our guests to separate garbage so we can recycle. Every year our club volunteers twice at Food Bank, which is our charity of choice. We encourage Airbnb hosts to be proactive about fire safety, and we hold meetups with TasFire staff and other fire safety operators. We support small businesses in many ways, including our Small Business Expos, where we invite businesses to an event where they can show their products and services. We also have Market Monday on our online page for recommending. The latest financial analysis reveals that Airbnb guests inject $20.3 billion annually into Australia's economy. This equates to roughly 7% of the nation's total tourism GDP. A comprehensive Oxford economics report details exactly how this flows into neighbourhood businesses and local industries. In my opinion, short-term rentals are a vital part of Tasmania's accommodation requirements. Hosting is an economic lifeline for many hosts and related industries. They fill gaps that hotels can't. They give visitors a home-like stay. They filter money into neighbourhoods and provide a way of earning a vital income that allows many people to earn money they never could before. Summing up, I feel that...
Excuse me, you have 30 seconds.
Summing up, I feel that the constant pushing back on the STR community by HCC is very divisive, and I believe there are ways of ensuring we can coexist within neighbourhoods. I believe banning does not give the result you seek. Look at the New York City example. We need to make building easier. We need to support landlords, not tear them down. After all, if renting is too hard, landlords will stop renting. It's happening already. I know. I talk to ex-landlords every day. I believe if councils sat down with hosts, we could develop formal, responsible hosting guidelines that would benefit everyone in Hobart and the wider community. I monitor social media closely, and I believe the majority of people in the Hobart LGA are sick of the constant rhetoric of council blaming STR solely for the housing situation. Those people are pro short-term rental, they run them or use them for travelling, and they feel people should be able to host their property on Airbnb if they want. I strongly oppose this draft amendment, PSA 25.3, and welcome the opportunity to work more constructively on solutions that would provide more meaningful support for housing. I think this amendment is a mistake, not just for hosts but for the city. Please let's build, not ban, and let's work together to make Hobart a wonderful city that welcomes travellers in many different ways. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you. Now, are there any questions from the elected members? No questions?
Thank you.
Meredith, thank you very much for your presentation. Appreciate it. Any questions to the staff? No, I have one question through you, Director. Why is it that Battery Point is exempted? Is it because of the Tasmanian Commission, or is there some other historical reasons of the planning?
Thank you, Chair. I invite Emma Riley, who's prepared 2 reports in support of this proposal, to speak to that issue.
Thank you, Chair. The reason why Battery Point is exempt from these provisions is because the planning scheme already limits short stay, whole house visitor accommodation within that area. That existing limitation came about from the Commission's consideration of the state planning provisions back in 2017, where they made a recommendation to the Minister that was accepted, that the Battery Point heritage area was excluded from the new statewide provisions that facilitated whole house visitor accommodation. And that limitation just was carried through into the new Tasmanian planning scheme.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yeah, through you to the appropriate person who can answer it. Is the state government going down the pathway of looking at legislation statewide in respect of this?
Through you, Chair, the most recent changes from the state government are to introduce a per-night levy for visitor accommodation use. It's my understanding they're not looking at making any changes to the ability to convert a dwelling to visitor accommodation.
Okay, which other councils across Tasmania have gone down this pathway?
Through you, Chair, to my knowledge, we are the first council to go down this path.
Would the other question, if someone can answer it, would this be an ad hoc situation, or are we probably better off going through the LGAT to lobby state government to have a statewide consideration of this?
Through you, Chair, we've been very clear in the evidence that's been provided to the Planning Committee that this is very much a Hobart-specific analysis of the impacts that we consider visitor accommodation conversions from dwellings have had and what that means for our city. So it's not the case that we would say that necessarily this should be rolled out throughout Tasmania.
And a further question, is there a housing shortage just in Hobart or across the whole state?
Through you, Chair, I think that it would be fair to say worldwide there are issues with housing supply.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Lubberg.
Just following on from Alderman Zuko's questions, I mean, I could ask the question, I guess, but I prefer to just make a statement. I believe Hobart's council area is much more highly saturated with whole home Airbnbs. Would that be an accurate statement through you? Much more saturated than other council areas in Tasmania.
Through you, Chair, I might pass that on to Ms Riley to see to what extent we've compared with other LGAs.
Yeah, as the Director has indicated, the analysis was undertaken just on Hobart. The specific issue in Hobart is the impact that Airbnb is, or short stay accommodation is having on the rental housing supply. So it's not about the housing crisis per se, it is about the impact on rental housing, and the Hobart municipality has a more severe shortage of rental housing than elsewhere in Tasmania, has very low vacancy rates, around the 1%.
Thank you. Any other questions from the elected members? No questions. Someone would like to move? Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, just a question on the Battery Point provision. When that was developed, was Battery Point the only area in the state that was excluded?
Through you, Chair, I might pass that back to Ms Riley as well.
I'm sorry, do you mind repeating the
Sure.
question?
When the 2017 amendment or
Yes.
legislation came in and Battery Point was excluded,
Yes.
was it the only area in the state?
Yes, it was. There were some slight modifications to some of the provisions that were applicable to Sullivan's Cove as well, but the Battery Point heritage area was the only entire area within the state.
And through you, Chair, if you can't recall, that's fine. But can you recall or give us a summary of why Battery Point and not North Hobart?
It was a result of the representations made to the Commission during its assessment of the state planning provisions. Effectively, council at the time and the community raised concerns about the rate of conversion in Battery Point. There was a window of time just before the Commission did its assessment where the provisions did change in an interim sense, and council started to see a very large number of applications coming through.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Harvey, you have a question or you move the recommendation?
Question. I'm happy to move the recommendation as well.
Okay.
So just to confirm again, nothing's changed with regard to what we're trying to achieve here from the period we've been out for engagement. So it's three categories of residential accommodation where where short stay will be banned, and nothing has changed with regard to allowing short stay in commercial areas and mixed use areas, and that's where we would encourage future short stay accommodation to occur.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Thank you. And just one more question for you. With regards to hearing, will the public or those who have shareholder interest in this have another opportunity at the Tasmanian Planning Commission to make submissions as well?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, they will. The decision that's made tonight will not be the final decision. We will then lodge further paperwork with the Tasmanian Planning Commission, and that body will hold hearings. It's required to hold those hearings as soon as possible or practicable, and people that have made a representation will be able to attend those hearings and put their position forward.
Thank you. So, Councillor Harvey, you move that now, the recommendation. Or anyone would like to speak to the recommendations? 1, 2, 3. Lord Mayor.
Things off. I think obviously I want to thank everyone who did make representations during the consultation period. Obviously, as we would expect, different views from different people depending on which side of this discussion come at this issue from. But I think the evidence that's been prepared and presented as part of this amendment is very compelling. It's been compelling for a number of years. We have been attempting to manage this largely unregulated market for at least 8 years. If not a little bit before, pretty much when it started, obviously, which was it 2016?
Through you, Chair, that's my recollection, yes.
And Hobart is in a unique position. We are a place that is very close for people to come to visit from Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra for the weekend. Often they are really keen to live like a local and live in the Hobart suburbs. I get that, and I can see the appeal of it, and I can see the appeal of it for property owners as well. However, it has got to a stage where it's having a very significant impact on our rental market. We are losing young people to other parts of Hobart because they can't get rentals here, and these are very significant numbers of rental stock that are basically have been turned into small hotels in our suburbs. I do really think this is a good compromise. It still allows for the growth of permits in many parts of central Hobart. It does nothing. It doesn't take away anybody's existing permit. And as we all know, the granny flat or renting out your home while you go on holidays, all of that is completely still allowed, which I think for many people that's what short stay and Airbnb, they always thought that was what it was going to be all about, and it's really morphed into this quite different beast that is something that's cities all over the world are dealing with. we have a higher penetration of short stays as a percentage of our rental market than I think any other capital city, similar to places like Byron Bay. But I do know that a couple of the capital cities, particularly Sydney, is going to be pursuing something very similar to this. And many cities that want to have cities that are thriving, that are places that people can work and use schools and use local shops and have the mix of housing stock. Many of them are now taking action, because without some sort of action, we completely turn our city into a place that's really doesn't have that long-term rental stock or enough of it. So yeah, I'm very supportive. I wish this process could be simpler and we could have moved faster. The state government is in denial about how difficult this is. Every time they get asked about short stay and the impact on local communities, they say, oh, it's up to councils, they can make those changes themselves. Well, you know, this is an example, a very good example of how long the process takes and how fraught it is and how expensive it is. And so it would be easier for the state government to change their regulations, to make it a simpler process for local governments to make the assessment and to set rules without this very, very complicated process. But I'm glad we're pursuing it. Thank you.
Any other? Alderman Bloomfield.
I find sometimes that some decisions actually tend to create other issues. One of the interesting things with this, I think, is the fact that the R7 allocation can't be rescinded once applied, and that has effectively created the road that we're now on, where we now face banning. And I can understand why we have brought on the annoyance of Airbnb, for instance, because if they know that they cannot have new ones, the current stock will over time reduce and remove itself, due to the fact that the stock itself will probably at some point no longer be of the appropriate standard to be held as an Airbnb, but it will not lose the licence. It means too that this particular classification ultimately isn't really being able to operate according to market forces, and market forces would have been a much better way to have actually looked at this if we could have had it that you could bring it on and you could take it off. So now we're in the firing line as well now with Airbnb, because whilst we are the first council to bring this forward, I understand that, and I can understand exactly why we're doing it too. It's not to say that there is no reason behind this, and there's not to say that the work that's gone behind this is not inappropriate. But we're already in the firing line at the moment as it is for the $5,000 fee for change of use and for doubling the rates, meaning that we've already put on an awful lot of additional criteria that no one else will suffer for operating a particular type of business. In fact, this particular type of business is also taxed differently as well in Australian tax law, being the fact that it's operated as a small business, yet it's treated as a passive income, therefore losing the right to the 5% discount, which means they pay $1,000 more tax a year. So they are penalised in every direction, and yet they still flourish because for some people it actually is a genuine and reasonable way for them to earn money. And I don't feel that we should take that particular option away from people. I can appreciate where we are, I can appreciate how we got there. I simply wish that that the government could have considered that an R7 classification should have been treated in a different format to stop us to being where we are at this point in time.
Thank you. I just want to remind the elected members that we are looking at the recommendations that's there, 1 to 3, and the first recommendation very clearly states that we receive and note. The second one states very clearly that we provide this to the Commission, and the third one very clearly states that the authority advises that it is satisfied with the draft amendment. So if you could make sure that you relate to those recommendations. Otherwise, I will have to, rule that you're talking about things which are not in there, unless you want to move a amendment. But if they're related issues, I will take them on. Thank you very much. Who's next? Councillor Ben Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'll be fairly quick here. I'm very supportive of this move. It's quite obvious to me that we do need some way to have discretion on whether we approve these, and that's what this is about. It's not about banning anything that exists. It's not about banning every single future application. It's about giving the council the power to decide, which was taken away from us by Planning Directive number 6. This planning request is a direct response to that planning directive from the government, which the government obviously could change if it wished, but it won't. The government itself has finally acknowledged that the oversaturation of Airbnb, short stay properties, whole home short stay properties, is affecting the rental market in Tasmania. And as a result, they've announced that they'll bring in their own levy. But it clearly is a problem. I mean, they've been the greatest supporter of these sort of whole home mini hotels, and now even the government is acknowledging the problems. Hobart has an even bigger problem. We are more saturated than any other area in this state, and in fact, as we heard from the Lord Mayor, we are more saturated than other capital cities around Australia. All of us around this table have heard complaints from neighbours in areas where many of the houses on their street have become mini hotels. And I think we've got a lot of door knocking in front of us, quite a few of us. We're going to find a lot more of those complaints, I suspect, out there this time. So I'm very, very supportive of this. I do agree that people should have the right to do what they want with their home, and as a result I support in-home Airbnb. I think it's a fabulous addition to the sector. But whole home Airbnb, in my view, the owner of that property is not living there, it's not their home, it's an investment property, and we're not talking about people being limited with what they want to do with their homes. When we talk about these properties, they are investment properties. You can only have one home. If you own multiple properties, one of them is your home, the others are investments. So we are dealing with investors here, not people living in their home being prevented from doing what they want to do in their home. And I think it's worth making that point very strongly. I am aware that Airbnb does or has announced that they're taking action against us. I think what we have done so far and what we are trying to do here is well within our rights as the council that represents this community. We are simply trying to respond to a significant issue around rental vacancy in this city, and that is that rental vacancy rates are almost non-existent. The city is shrinking. We are having people, again, as the Lord Mayor pointed out, people are leaving this city and having to live elsewhere out on the outskirts and facing incredible transport costs in particular, and in time and money, in order to come into the city to work because they can't afford to live here, which is the other side effect of this particular issue that we're facing, which is that prices in the city have been driven up, in my view, artificially, by the conversion of residential properties into mini hotels. The only point that I'm not that happy about really is that this will not do anything to solve the current issue. All the stats we're seeing at the moment relate to the current situation in Hobart. As I've stated before, this is simply a move to allow us some discretion on future applications. It will not change current numbers at all. And I personally do think that we do need to do more work in that area really around the current number of houses that have been lost to whole home Airbnb in this city, but that's for another day. So look, I commend this to my colleagues and to the community. This is the council being responsive to a significant problem in this city, and I'll be voting to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lohberger. Councillor Passot.
Thank you, Chair. So there are more than 9,500 Tasmanians waiting for a home at the moment on the housing wait list. That represents 5,500 households, and of that 9,500, 3,000 of them are children. Now, it's ironic that 4,700 whole homes are listed on Airbnb in Tasmania when we have a need for just over 5,000. And Councillor Lohberger mentioned the effect on the market and driving prices up. And it's estimated that in Hobart City alone, there is $1 billion worth of residential real estate tied up in Airbnb. And again, that goes to family budgets, cost of living, and the housing crisis. And what we know is that more than 94,000 Tasmanian households are estimated to be experiencing either mortgage or rental housing stress. What that means is that people are struggling to pay their bills, they are struggling to put school uniforms on their children, they are struggling to feed themselves and their family. And we know that economists tell us that a healthy rental market should be about 3% vacancy rate. And yet here we are in Hobart with one of the lowest vacancy rates in the country at 0.6%. The City of Sydney, which the Lord Mayor referenced, are investigating restricting Airbnb to suburbs where there is a rental crisis. And they are using the professional benchmark of 3%. If there is anything less than a 3% vacancy rate, then the City of Sydney wishes to prevent further conversions to Airbnb and prohibit Airbnb altogether. And yet here in Hobart, 3% is a dream scenario. It's a dream scenario. Councillor Lohberger referenced the impact of people travelling a long way. We know that transport costs are a significant household burden, particularly thanks to a fuel crisis started by Donald Trump. We have families that are on the brink, and we are allowing homes close to workplaces, close to good schools, close to services to disappear from the market. It is not a tenable position that we find ourselves in, and it is irresponsible for us to allow it to continue to happen. And there are plenty of places around Australia and around the world that have implemented restrictions on Airbnb like we are looking for. In Australia, this includes places like Byron Bay, hugely reliant on the tourism market. City of Sydney I've spoken about, Busselton, metropolitan Perth. Around the world, again, tourism hotspots, Barcelona, Amsterdam, Paris, have all implemented restrictions on Airbnb and short-term accommodation because they have realised that it has gone too far, and the people which this council and the government more broadly serve are paying a price. And not only that, the governments themselves are paying a price, because what we know is that building more homes on the urban fringe takes away arable land where farmers can farm fresh food for us to consume, but also is massively more expensive on governments to build, because they need to build new roads, new sewer connections, new power connections, new transport connections. Everybody is losing, and a very small number of people are winning. The final thing I would say on this chair is, again, like Councillor Lohberger, this does nothing to address the current state of affairs in this city. And as a council, we are approaching an election, and throughout the next term of council, we need to have a serious look at what we can do to return community to our neighbourhoods. Neighbourhoods were never designed to be hotels. You didn't sign up to live in a community and find both of your neighbours are getting new tourists every night of the week. You signed up to have a neighbourhood member, a community member next door to you. Someone who can look out for you if you're elderly. Someone who can sit with your baby. Sorry, just a moment. When my son had his second seizure, I called on my neighbour. It was the only person that I could call on to look after my sleeping baby while we got my older son to the hospital. That is what neighbourhoods and communities are about. And this is a scourge. So I will fully support this, and I look forward to doing more next term, Chair.
Any other speakers before Councillor Harvey?
Me?
Councillor
I
Harvey.
wasn't quite sure. You didn't give me the nod earlier.
Councillor
Okay.
Harvey.
The original intent of short stay was to share your house, to share your spare rooms, to rent out your granny flat, hire out your granny flat or your ancillary building. And for me, what we're doing here with these amendments is pushing short stay back to the original intent, which was to share homes, which was to share your extra bedrooms, your granny flats, those sort of things. So hopefully that is still a thing that occurs, that those people who want to share their home as short stay can do so. We've also got the areas that are commercial and retail, areas in Hobart that are not zoned as residential that are available to short stay. And I'm hopeful that over time, some of those warehousing or other buildings that are underutilised in the commercial areas might be turned into short stay as well, where they're able to do so. So I kind of see this as an opportunity for inner city commercial short stay development, which we already have. And a lot of the buildings, and as Alderman Zuko has said over the years, we need to be using the shop tops a bit more wisely and getting people into them. So maybe this is the impetus for development of some of those shop tops and for buildings that are underutilised to become short stay accommodation in zones where it's allowed, has been allowed. So all we're doing is restricting whole homes in residential areas. And as others have said, that's the problem we have with the loss of whole homes in residential areas, which has changed the character of many of the areas in Hobart. And being out door knocking, it's quite surprising or startling how many short stays you walk up to the door of, and you can see it's a short stay by the key locks and other various things, and people who answer the door and say, no, I'm just staying here. So it is a problem, as has been identified. Resolving it, for me, means going back to the original intent of short stay. So, and I think there's plenty of opportunity in Hobart to still have an increase in short stay, but not in the residential areas. So I'm hopeful that it will do some of the things that we would like to see happen, which is the development of shop tops, the development of commercial areas into creative short stay opportunities. So I will be supporting this recommendation tonight that I moved earlier.
Thank you. Alderman Bloom.
I just wanted to explore with the room whether we introduce an amendment based on what Councillor Posselt had mentioned earlier with Sydney, that we could have an in-between point where we recommend this, but we state that as long as the ban stays, as long as the rental vacancy remains at less than 3%. So if it becomes greater than 3%, then people are able to then apply again like before. So we can actually not completely ban, but at the same time allow that lever to exist, which is what was specified happens in Sydney. So we could introduce something similar. So that way we're not saying a blanket no. What we're saying is if the vacancy rate is less than 3%, then no, you can't have a new one. But if the vacancy rate is greater than 3%, then we're kind of within that realm of saying, well, look, you know, there's probably a bit of spare room now. We can probably allow a few to be applied for.
So I'm just wanting to get this clarified. Are you moving an amendment?
I would like to move an amendment.
You're wanting to move an amendment that when the vacancy rate is greater than 3%.
Correct.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Chair, can I skip to
Yeah.
I wonder whether Alderman Bloomfield might be able or consider modifying that amendment into that we get a report on the tools and mechanisms that the City of Sydney is using
It's fine.
on this, because my understanding is we're in the middle of a sort of quite a formal amendment process, so we can't sort of change the design of what we're proposing, and also our planning scheme may not allow for that kind of model, whereas in Sydney they could be doing a bylaw for all we know. They might not even be using.
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine.
It's okay. Excuse me, please make sure not talking across one at a time. When she finishes, then I'll give you the opportunity. Thank you.
That's it.
Abina, thank you.
Yeah, look, I'm through the chair. I'm perfectly happy with that. Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
I would suggest that that would be a foreshadowed motion, since it's not relevant to the item tonight.
Anybody else wants to speak? Alderman Zukov.
Yeah, just a couple of things I want to clarify. Firstly, I respect, yes, it was a unanimous decision, the previous planning meeting on June 10th, and I made a point on what I voted for, and I voted for the Planning Authority receive and note the report, and then point 6, in accordance to section 40G of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act, the Planning Authority places an amendment on public exhibition for 28 days. I've never voted against going down the pathway of consultation, and that, to my point of view, is consultation to see what the public and the people have to say about it. Based on what I've read in here and going through the submissions, which I note that there's 46 plus 6, and somewhere it's got 51, so that I may have taken on board the number of copy and paste submissions that were in the submissions that were slightly amended as well. So, you know, we might have got 46, but if you read them carefully, a few of them are copy and paste. To me, it's going down the pathway of going, well, why are we going down the pathway of having a public exhibition for 28 days and getting submissions in? So if you go down that pathway and you read the submissions, the majority of them were against going down this pathway. So to my point of view, what's the point of even going down the pathway of a Section 40 if we're not going to take on board the submissions that are there? Okay, it looks like in the report that there's been more weight given to the lesser submissions than there was on the majority, but I've got to say to you, my reading of the submissions, they were quite overwhelming, that we should probably look down the pathway of another pathway. I've said from the start, when this whole debate started with about the short stay, that they should be, irrespective where they were, they should be treated on a commercial basis. Because if we convert a house into a, doctor's surgery, it's basically a commercial property. What concerns me here is not the fact that we're just looking at short stay, but if we're going to want to go down the pathway of keeping residential areas residential, well, maybe we should be looking at making sure that there's no business happening in any residential area. Because if that's the intent, and also in the intent of the rental market, well, that's what we should be doing. So signalling just one category, because this one category has gone down this pathway, which actually creates a benefit to the city anyway, economically, I find it not allowing a person to do as they please for a property they own. Because at the end of the day, a person owns a property, they should be entitled to do what they wish to do with it within accordance to the planning scheme, which we got, and we're going down the pathway of changing it. The other aspect of it is listening to the representative. It stated that their organisation is willing to sit down with the council and find a pathway forward. Now this amendment's still got a long way to go, probably 12 months, 2 years potentially. Is that correct, Ms. Amy?
Through you, Chair, it is difficult to say. I think 12 months is probably a realistic expectation.
And there's an election coming up. Who knows what might happen at that election? And we might be facing some legal challenges which will cost ratepayers more. So to my point of view, you know, we should be here listening to those representations that we got, and maybe sat down and said, well, let's sit down and let's talk about it and see if we can find a better pathway forward. This is not going to resolve the rental crisis across the state and in Hobart. We have missed the boat. We missed the boat over 8 years ago by not approving quite a number of developments that sit idle. Now, yes, okay, we can say at the moment that we've got to 1% refusal rate. But on that 1% refusal rate, we're also probably experiencing the least amount of applications we've ever had for housing accommodation in this city because of cost. We've got properties that are sitting around Hobart that are derelict because they're not being developed. Some had 3 or 4 applications. So yes, we can blame the short stay market for the rental crisis, for the housing shortage, but I think this council also has got a lot to answer for in respect of what we didn't do many years ago and let these applications lapse and the developers decide to go and invest their dollars in the Gold Coast, where I don't think there's a real big housing shortage up on the Gold Coast, I assure you, because they're building like anything else.
Alderman Zuko, can I just please address the recommendations?
I'm talking about the rental market. It was mentioned at the rental market, so I'm referring to the rental market. Sydney was mentioned because I mentioned Gold Coast. All of a sudden, I'm out of sequence. Sorry, Mr. Chair. You're
Alderman Zuko, can I please? I didn't say that. You're making it. What I'm saying is that I would appreciate if you address the recommendations. That's what I'm saying. Please don't make that conclusion.
Well, the recommendation, people are talking about Sydney, people are talking about rental markets. I am talking about the rental markets. I'm talking about the comparisons of Hobart and the Gold Coast, like the comparisons of Sydney and Hobart. I'm sorry.
Once again, please, can I draw attention to that? I'm simply asking.
Mr. Chair, it's typical.
Excuse me.
It's typical.
Alderman Zuko,
It's typical
I'm warning you
of this council and chair people
Alderman Zuko,
always attacking
I'm asking
people
you,
like myself.
Alderman Zuko, I'm asking you, order.
You're shouting.
I'm asking you, please, it's order. I'm just asking you to please wait. Once I've given you the okay, then you talk. Don't speak over me. That's all I'm saying.
I'm not speaking
okay.
over you.
No, it's
Chair,
okay. No,
no,
do you want...
Mr. Chair,
Alderman
Zuko,
do you want to now speak? Continue to speak.
I do want to speak.
Okay.
Let me speak.
Continue.
Thank you.
Continue to speak.
Mr. Chair, you interrupted me.
No, it is my
and
role.
You've just done it again.
It is my role.
Look,
to.
There's no point.
If you want to speak, please do.
I will
it is my role.
Speaking, Mr. Chair, because you're interrupting me
Alderman
every
Zuko,
time I
once
speak.
again, I'm warning you. This is the second warning. Let me tell you. Thank you. If you want to speak, you're able to. Any other speakers? No? Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
Deputy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Look, Chair, I did just want to make the point that it's been stated a few times that we're banning short stay accommodation or houses for Airbnb. I just want to reiterate that no one is banning anything. I'd like to highlight that this is a draft planning amendment aimed at managing new whole home visitor accommodation in certain residential areas. And I would like to point out what those residential areas are. The local business zone, general business zone, it doesn't affect other areas, and I'd like to point out which areas it doesn't affect, which is the local business zone, general business zone, central business zone, urban mixed use zone, or any other SAP such as the Battery Point Specific Area Plan or Hobart Commercial Zone. The draft amendment does not affect the status of visitor accommodation in those specific areas that I've just mentioned. I also commend Alderman Zuko for pointing out the comments that have been made in the submissions and our responses to those submissions as well. There's a few that I'd just like to note because, as I understand, it's been proffered that we hadn't followed certain rules or certain laws around statutory planning laws, and that's discussed in a very detailed manner from the responses that have been provided. As well as suggesting that this will impact tourism offering. And I did just want to read some of our responses to the submissions. The draft amendment would not prohibit visitor accommodation across Hobart and does not affect existing lawful approvals, hosted accommodation or exempt accommodation. It would be limited to the future conversion of whole dwellings to visitor accommodation within specified residential zone. There is also another one that speaks about operations regarding maintenance and repair businesses, and notes that short stay maintenance work provides most of their income. The response to that is also very interesting, and I would really recommend that people have a read of that. And just to touch on it, the response was, the draft amendment is a land use planning response aimed at reducing the future conversion of existing residential dwellings to whole dwelling visitor accommodation within residential zones, seeking to better balance competing land use interests. While potential economic impacts have been considered, the draft amendment strikes an appropriate balance between economic interests and the need to retain housing stock for permanent residents. It is also noted that the draft amendment would not prohibit visitor accommodation across Hobart's municipality and would not affect existing lawful visitor accommodation. This is repeated throughout that, and there is also a really thorough response from the submissions that have been made around the use class under the planning scheme. There is nothing in the Looper Act or the structure of the Tasmanian planning scheme that prevents a planning instrument from applying different standards to different forms, scales, locations, or operational characteristics of use. It also speaks about Section 32 of Looper and the allowability of the draft amendment, not focusing on hosted accommodation, primary residence arrangements, secondary residences, and so forth. So I think it's really quite a thorough response to all of those submissions, and I really do commend those responses because they highlight that the statutory process has been followed. Statutory requirements have been followed, the act that allows us to do different things, and these are all within the rules and the law that's there. And I do also want to just highlight what Professor Phipps said as well at the end. And he notes, a very recent paper used the opportunity of the recent New York City regulation to see what happened to neighbourhoods when Airbnb activity significantly declined. They found that neighbourhoods were cleaner and safer after the regulation was introduced. He goes on to say that removing large numbers of properties from the long-term rental sector has had an impact on the affordability of rents through the operation of the laws of supply and demand. COVID-19 provided a natural experiment to witness the impact of a small reduction in short-term rentals on the long-term rental market. The analysis of Hobart LGA permit addresses has demonstrated the connection between long and short-term accommodation markets. The introduction of the proposed SAP would reduce upward pressure on rents, increase the availability of long-term rental properties, support the reuse of existing dwellings to cater for future urban growth, and potentially increase the amenity of properties located in the residential zones. As a result, Chair, I am very encouraged by the thorough analysis that has been undertaken, the thorough responses that have been provided, and this is just the first step. This is part of the consultation process. We have received responses in response to the submissions, and they have been very particular with regards to how we are following the scheme and the Act. So I commend this particular recommendation, and hopefully it goes on to the Commission where it will be considered further. And this is just the beginning. This is part of the beginning of the process to be able to try to address the levels of vacancy rates here in Hobart. And it is not just about the supply and demand that has been noted here quite extensively, and addressing the housing crisis is not solely the responsibility of reducing short stay accommodation, which has been inferred on numerous occasions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Someone who hasn't spoken? No? All right. I am going to just state here very clearly that when I read the submissions, I also was of the view that the majority of the submissions were opposing this. Now, I take that on board quite strongly. And when I looked at it, my only justification and explanation and understanding was that because it wasn't addressing the criteria, and therefore the Independent Empire Era Advisory then made the recommendation. It wasn't the recommendation made by staff, point number one. Point number two, there may be feelings, as it were, that this council, elected members may be biased, and therefore we will vote in a particular way because of ideological positions, etc. And the point number three is this, that as already stated, this is the consultation process, step one. An independent empire, the Tasmanian Planning Commission will look at it, look at all the evidence, and then those who have opposed it will have another opportunity, and that empire will make the decision if it's going to go forward or not. So this is not a decision making where we'll say it'll come in. This is a recommendation we're putting forth to the Tasmanian Planning Commission, and there'll be opportunities for others to make that submission. Now, there is a foreshadowed motion, and we're going to vote on the recommendation first. If that goes through, then we don't follow up with the foreshadowed motion. Is that clear with everybody? All right. I have put that recommendation. Those in favour, recommendation 1 to 3.
Aye.
Aye.
Those against?
No.
Okay, hands up, please. Those in favour?
Lord Mayor, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Gissets, Councillor Lawberger, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Duff.
And against?
Alderman Sukol, Councillor Coates, Alderman Brookfield.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, those of you who have been here, and thank you for the submission once again. We'll now move on to our next item, which was 6.1.
So moved. Moved.
Move. Any questions? Any queries? No questions? No. I have a number of questions, and I will ask the question. Maybe it can be then provided later, the answers, because I've got a number of questions here. I refer to 3.3 and 3.4 on page 11, and it states the impact assessment concluded that the risk to the road reservation is low, provided the recommended risk mitigation measures are implemented during the works. Now, it is my understanding, and I stand corrected, that the council, firstly, under the Order 2025, will be consulted. It's required to be consulted. And also, it is my understanding that we also play an enforcement role. Is that correct?
Thank you, Chair. This is the consultation for this particular step that they are proposing to take, that MPDC are proposing to take. So this is the consultation itself. We do have a compliance role to a certain extent, although as we discussed at the workshop on Monday evening, in other respects, the EPA or other bodies, for example Heritage Tasmania, are the enforcement body. So the reason this one is coming to us today is because we are asset owners. We own the roads around the site, and we're being consulted to make sure as asset owners that we're comfortable that the road will not be impacted. That assessment is very common in planning type assessments to make sure that yes, the development can proceed as long as you're not impacting on our assets. So that's why it's come to the Planning Authority.
Thank you. Okay. And then with regards to 5.1.4 on page number 13, it reads, the Planning Authority is specified as the agency responsible for enforcement as far as relevant conditions of B12 and B13. So my question is, what does as far as relevant means in legal terms or planning terms?
It just means perhaps it's just the way that I phrased that, Chair. It's essentially saying that we are the agency as planning authority that's responsible for enforcing conditions B12 and B13. And that the reason that we're responsible as the enforcement body is due to Schedule 8 has a list of which agency is responsible for which condition.
Okay, and then on to page 19, deconstruction methodology, point number 6. And I read, depending on the operating radius of the crane, an overall sale agreement may need to be sought with the Hobart City Council. Now, my question is, what crane, say for example, a crane is operating, what is the radius before it triggers an oversale?
Thank you, Chair. I might pass this question to Claire Bryan, who's with us as the Manager of Assets and also responsible for our responsibilities as Road Network Manager, to see if she's able to respond to that one.
I'm not responsible for issuing of permits for cranes. That sits with the City Transport Group. However, I think that if they are going to occupy the road in any way with the crane, and that may include swinging, then they would have to get a permit from the City of Hobart to put that crane there and use it over the road reserve. And that's fairly normal and can be handled through application of regular traffic management techniques.
Yeah, so if there is the oversale, then it can trespass airspace. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
All right. And therefore, my next question is, which, say for
Point
this...
of order on relevance,
yes.
Chair. We've now had questions as to the definition of if an air sale goes into air. We've had questions on relevance. We've had questions about the definition of the word relevant. I mean, this isn't speaking to the actual recommendations that are in front of us. This is just going through and asking for grammatical points about certain intricate parts of the report to which we don't actually have the officers here to relate to.
So what is the point of order?
It's not relevant.
Okay, so I overrule that. It is relevant. I'm asking questions. It is not debating the recommendations. I'm simply asking questions, and as you know, we have the opportunity to ask questions, and then we follow up and debate the recommendation. So this is stage one, we're asking questions. And so my next question with regards to this, now if for example, there is an airspace overhang, will there be an agreement made with the council?
Chair, perhaps if I can assist. So a permit will be, further permits will be required. So the order replaced the key permits, including the land use planning approval planning permit and the environmental legislation. It doesn't cover off on other permits required under other legislation, which we're still required to assess and issue in the usual way. And as part of doing those permitting processes, which our team does every day of the week, they assess things like risk and impact on the surrounding businesses and whether or not there are likely to be any impact. So they might have to provide some further information at that point to clarify exactly what they're going to be doing, exactly what the impacts will be.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the clarification. Any other questions? Now, someone would like to move the recommendations 1, 2, 3. Now we're debating the recommendation.
Yeah.
Councillor, have you moved? Any discussion and debate on the recommendations? No, I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right,
I
move
didn't
on.
vote. I didn't vote.
Yeah, it voted, isn't it?
I didn't vote.
Okay, those in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
No.
All right, I didn't hear the no. Okay, now I never heard it. Can we hands up, please, for those for?
Councillor Coates, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lowberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Harvey, Deputy Law Mayor, Councillor Glass.
Against? Okay. So one abstention and the others voted. Okay, I've taken that. All
Thank
right.
you, Chair. An abstention is a vote in the
Yeah,
negative,
it's
so
a
that
negative.
motion is
That's
passed.
right. Yeah, it's passed. And I'm sure everybody knows that. All right, the next one is
Advertising.
6.3, advertising.
So moved.
Moved. Any questions? Councillor Passot.
Thank you. And Director, you might not be aware of this one because it's small bickies, but item 21, alterations and signage. I think I'm in the right report. Sometimes I get confused between the two reports. Just wondering if you can tell us if that signage is digital or electronic.
Sorry, I do have some notes which have kindly been prepared for me.
Thank you.
But I don't have notes on that one in particular. There certainly has been an elevation of team's consideration of illuminated signs. That one hasn't been drawn to my attention, so I assume it's not illuminated.
Excellent. Thank you, Director. I appreciate that.
Any other questions? No, I'll put the recommendation. All in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. 6.4, delegated decision report. Any questions? Question, Councillor Passot.
Won't surprise you, Director. Item 17, 85 to 99 Collins Street signage. Same question.
I feel the pattern coming on for eternity.
Until we sort it out, Councillor Harvey, probably. At least we should know what's happening.
Through you, Chair, I also don't have any notes on that one in particular as well, so I would assume that that one is also not illuminated, but I can take that one on notice.
That'd be great, Director. The cost listed is $20,000, which makes me think it might be. Thanks very much.
Councillor Lohberger.
No, that's okay.
That's okay. Answered.
Thank you.
Anyone else with any other questions? I'll put the recommendations. Those in favour?
Aye.
Deputy. Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Questions without notice. Any questions? No. Someone moved that the meeting be closed.
Moved.
Moved.